Welcome back to the Real Couchwives podcast where we overanalyze all things Bravo. This week we are recapping Summerhouse Season 8, Episode 7.
Andrea has made his triumphant return to the Summerhouse. We love to see it. There's a really cute Italian dinner, like a night in Capri, or Capri, as Jesse from the Valley would say. I don't actually know which one it's supposed to be.
I've always gone with Capri Sun, so that's how I know which one it is.
Same. And then the biggest thing that happens in this episode really is that we find out that Kyle has been demoted to flowerboy in Lindsay and Carl's wedding after Carl literally officiated and one hit was his best man. So everyone has a lot of thoughts and opinions, probably including us on this. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes. So we are actually starting the episode at the end of the Speedway party. They're just doing a little bit of a recap. As you guys remember, Lindsay and Paige and Amanda were chatting about Lindsay and Carl's relationship. Basically, Paige is kind of really thinking that Lindsay just wants the fairy tale version of this relationship and, kind of feels like neither of them actually really like each other that much. They just want, this fairy tale, beautiful, love is love kind of experience. And they end it with Amanda toasting to no more fights on Fridays.
No more Friday fights. Yeah, honestly, I have to say though, Paige's reads on this was spot on in her confessional. Yeah. She's like, I feel like exactly what you said. Like, I feel like they just kind of just wanting that fairy tale ending. And she's even like, oh, he started off as my best friend, and then I was unlucky in dating, and then it was just so perfect.
Yeah. And then we found each other at Kyle and Amanda's wedding, and it was just like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I love you.
Maybe I love you, Shep. Man, that never gets old. For those of you who haven't seen Southern Charm, you have to, specifically for that.
Definitely worth going to it.
Yeah, and then at one point, like, she's even like, you guys, like, don't seem to like each other. Like, at what point do we, like, punch out? Like,
yeah. Well, that's just it, right? Because Lindsay's saying, like, I think it's worth working at, and, like, yeah, it's a lot of work, but, like, it's work that I'm willing to do, and working on it is like half the battle in a relationship, right? Like, if you guys are at least willing to work on it, at least you've met yourself halfway there. And then, Paige is very much like, well, when do you just, like, call it? Like, say it's dead in the water, like, not happening anymore, like, end of the road, and just time to move on.
Yeah. So. Lindsay says too that she saw like little flags, but they weren't big enough.
They're miniature flags.
I guess, all the fights they've been getting into up until now were little flags.
Yeah, that's just it. Well, so it's interesting because, in the after show, they do talk about this, obviously. They particularly talk about kind of like the idea of postponing the wedding. And Lindsay admits that this is something that had come up a lot over the course of the summer. But Lindsay is very much the kind of person, and she says in the after show too, like, I'm the kind of person that, like, works on relationships, and I know that relationships take work, and, like, we could be, here 50 years from now still be working on this relationship. And that's, I think, just goes to show, I don't know, like, just a different mindset, because I do think to a certain degree, like, it doesn't need to be that hard. Like, yeah, a relationship is work, but it shouldn't be that much work.
Yeah,
right?
But when you look back at her past relationships, like, I don't think she knows any different. Like, that's just always the kind of relationship that she's found herself in. Yeah. So maybe in her mind, that is the way it is. But that's also an interesting way of answering why wouldn't you postpone the wedding. It's like, wouldn't you feel uncomfortable getting married when you're in such a bad place? Like, starting Apparently off your marriage that way, I don't know. I guess maybe they're like, well, look at Kyle and Amanda, like, they literally almost broke up before, and then they were good for like a season. And now but it's like, look at Kyle and Amanda, like, look at the problems they're having now.
That? Like, exactly. Well, and so then Lindsay does have quite a shady little comment there in the after show as well, where she says, some people are just used to working more than others. It's like, okay, Lindsay, we see how you feel about this. Don't worry. We know. All good on that front. And then she's also like, I normalize needing to do the work, and, like, I don't play the victim. And it's like,
excuse?
Okay, interesting.
Do we need to roll the tapes of your PR stint? Yeah, it's very interesting. Honestly, it's really interesting to see her after show, because she has not changed like one iota of her stances.
Steadfast.
even
100%.
when we're talking about the Flowerboy stuff a little bit later, like she's still like basically backing herself. And then like
Yeah.
I don't we'll get into it like really soon, but I think
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I'm just blanking on her name right now.
Gabby?
Gabby, yeah.
Carl?
Jeez.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Carl. I don't know why I said
I
Carl.
think Gabby was like kind of giving her like a sarcastic, like, okay, like when Lindsay explained
Yeah.
her side of it. And I think
Yeah.
Lindsay misread that as like, oh, I see your point now. And she's like,
Right.
see, like I'm nice. Like now you understand, like, oh, I'm getting
Isn't
all
it
this hate for
funny?
nothing. Ha ha
Yeah.
ha. And you're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what just happened.
No, that's not what just happened at all. Well, okay, and then the last interesting thing about the after show that I will say, particularly to this like conversation, is that Lindsay, like, when she talks about what they were fighting about and why they might postpone the wedding, she's like, "Well, like, why would we do that? Like, what did I really question? I question your career, like, as if that was the only big thing that they were fighting about, and that like." There was no other discussions that were happening over the course of the summer that would lead to them needing to postpone or needing to like break up at like this engagement.
Again, like, does
And
she
it's
think
like,
that we're not watching the show? Like, does she think that the show's going to be edited completely different? That we're not? I don't understand her tactics here.
I don't understand. I don't understand either. But anyways, so they have that conversation. They wrap it up. We'll wrap it up as well. The boys have also been chatting about the state of the Carl and Lindsay's relationship, and basically Kyle admits in a confessional that he's really not going to use this opportunity to say how he really feels. He knows that Carl was very much there for him during his relationship when he was kind of having struggles with Amanda before they got married, so he's just going to kind of bow out of it,
What was
which I think is
interesting,
fair.
yeah, what's interesting here too, though, is he points out, like, you know, in him and Amanda's situation, like he was the problem, and in this situation,
He doesn't think
he
Carl's the
doesn't
problem.
think Carl's the problem, so he thinks that it's
Yeah.
not apples to apples, and
Mm-hmm.
I could kind of understand that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like Carl would feel a little bit more comfortable talking to Kyle, being like, hey man, like you're gonna mess this up. But also, yes, Kyle and him had their problems like a little bit, but like I feel like once Carl actually proposed, Kyle got
Yeah.
on board pretty fast. Like I feel
Yeah,
like
he
he really
did.
turned around and he was like, okay, I'm gonna support you.
Yeah, exactly. And even well, and we see it later on in the episode, and we won't like get like too ahead of it, but it feels like Kyle is still very much trying to find ways to be supporting Carl, in like any kind of way that he can. So I do think that that kind of like interestingly brings us to the conversation that Carl and Kyle have about Carl's wedding, and how Carl really wants Kyle to be part of his wedding. So he wants him to be a flower boy with Andrea and Luke.
And
Which like no, go for it. What
I
are
was
your
just gonna
thoughts on
say, I just
this?
felt so bad for Kyle in the
Yeah.
moment because he's like, I would
Yeah.
love, I really want you to be part of my wedding, and he's like, I'd be honored, and he's like, yeah, I want you
Yeah.
to, and Carl can't even get the words out. He's like,
Yeah.
I want you to be a flower boy,
A flower boy.
and then merman. Oh, that just came to me.
I love that. I love that.
But that's kind of how he said it, because then later he's like,
Yeah.
so not as a groomsman, and then
Yeah.
Carl's like, flower boy.
Flower boy. You, Luke, and Andrea are flower boys. Yeah. And like Lindsay's excuse for it kind of like in the after show too is that like, oh, it's an adults only resort, like we can't even have kids, so like, it would be fun for them. But it does kind of feel like, oh, here's my reality show friends. Here they are like walking down the aisle together as flower boys because they're nothing serious. They're reality TV show friends.
It's also exactly what Paige said. She's like, in Lindsay's mind, she's like, yeah, you're gonna walk in front of me and you're gonna throw petals out, and
yeah,
you are
as
going.
I walk down the aisle.
Yeah. Okay. I had a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Obviously, at first, that really sucks for Kyle. I think that's really unfair. I'm trying to play devil's advocate for a second, being like, being Lindsay, knowing that Kyle has definitely spoken to her in not a very nice way in the past.
Yeah.
So I understand you want people who are up with you on that day, who like love and support both of you, but at the same time, this is going to cause so many ripples in their friendship that they are just now trying to put back together. And I think it's a really unfair situation to put Carl in. And I think you could just kind of suck it up for that one day and have him
Yeah.
be up there with you. Like,
Yeah.
Kyle
Like,
has
what does it
supported
matter?
them.
Yeah.
After that, he is Carl's really good friend, but
Mm-hmm.
Carl also should have pushed back. Like, it's pretty ridiculous for
Yeah.
Carl to be
Yeah.
like, and he says it in
Yeah.
the after show
He's gonna
too.
love that.
He's like, that was ridiculous. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think it's interesting too that like basically so Carl in his confessional in this moment says he says so because the producer asked like is that a demotion and Carl says this is how I really deep down feel. Lindsay didn't want Kyle to be a groomsman. Carl, that's not really how you deep down feel. That's you just throwing Lindsay under the bus in that moment. And yeah, you didn't stick up for your friend and be like, Lindsay, yeah, I get that you don't have a great relationship with him anymore, but like, if he's one of 7 guys like standing up there or whatever, how many guys there were there, like what's it gonna matter if he's one of 7 or something, like one of 6, let's
yeah,
say,
and it's like you have
like
to
how
think
big
of
of a
it.
deal?
You have to think of it past that day. Like, they're just repairing their friendship, and it's also going to
Mm-hmm.
negatively impact Lindsay because Kyle's going to know where this is
Yeah.
coming from.
Well,
That's
especially
not
if
gonna,
Carl's not gonna defend
yeah.
his wifey
Like,
there.
no one. I just don't think it's gonna make anything any better. And yeah, on top of
No.
it, Andrea, who is a newer friend, as much as we
Yeah.
love him,
Yeah.
and Luke, it's just like, and you know what?
Yeah.
He was committing. He's like, it would have been pretty funny to see, I
It
have to
would have been
say.
pretty funny. He would have done a really good job, but he would have done a really good job if it was like any other situation, right? Like if it
Mm-hmm.
was like a friend, like if like, let's say Danielle was getting married and Danielle was like, Kyle, I have this hilarious idea. I think it'd be so fun if you, Luke, and Andrea got married.
Yeah.
Got married.
Freudian
If you
slip.
if you if you guys were flower girls like for my wedding, I think Kyle would be like, yeah, that's hilarious. Let's do it. Like I think he would bring it. He would totally find the funny in it. But I think it's such a different situation because it's Carl, and Carl literally officiated his wedding. Not only did he officiate his wedding, like we all like were brought to tears by the job that Carl did officiating Kyle and Amanda's wedding. Like,
Yeah, and it's not even like Flower Man. It's like you're gonna be the Flower Boy.
one of 3 flower boys with Luke, who we haven't seen in years, and Andrea, who just makes flyby visits.
Oh, it's just so funny. And hearing the group talk about it too on the after show, I think Jesse's like, he's like, I could see Lindsay convincing him, and then Carl being like, oh yeah, that's such a nice gesture.
Oh, that's really nice. That's really great. He's gonna love that. Yeah, no, exactly.
He'll toss out Loverboy down the aisle.
Yeah, exactly. He would. That's just it. Kyle would come prepared. I think he would do a good job. Anyways, and that'll continue to come up throughout the episode. Anyways, so the next morning, we have a really nice scene actually between Paige and Craig, kind of chatting in bed, talking about the Carl and Lindsay situation. Craig admits that kind of like this summer feels a lot easier than last summer did, which I think is very true. We're all kind of getting that vibe. Paige kind of realizes through her conversation with Lindsay and Amanda yesterday that, this is how things should have always been or should be in general between Lindsay, Amanda, and her. Like they've known each other for 6 years. They should be able to be kind of like normal, cordial adults and just be able to chat about that kind of stuff. And Craig admits that, yeah, when you see that chill side of Lindsay, like it's such a good side of Lindsay or such a version of Lindsay. Which I think we can relate to as the audience, is that we have seen like good versions of Lindsay. We have had good times with her.
Lindsay is really fun, and I think she can also be a really good friend. She just can also be a really volatile one. And it's sad that like it takes this situation where I feel like she's just kind of like very isolated for the for her and the girls to open up to each other. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, it's kind of like a trope in Housewives that like if they're able to get one of them to cry, they're all like, oh my god, thank you so much for being vulnerable with me. I really appreciate it.
I'm so glad that we bullied you into having this reaction.
I don't think this is the same in any way. I do think that like Paige and Amanda have a lot more like altruistic intentions in this conversation than we've seen in some of the Housewives one, where they do kind of bully them into crying. But it is like there's something that almost brings people together when people show their like
true sides,
sadness almost.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, and I do feel bad for Lindsay because I do ultimately feel like this isn't the right relationship for her, and I think that she could be so much better off with like a better partner, and Carl is just not the partner for her.
Yeah. And
It's
I
what
feel
we basically
like
talked about all last week.
I mean like for the whole seasons, like everyone's been saying this, and like I'll continue saying this for like the entire time, but like I am really sad for their friendship. They had such a
Yeah,
beautiful, beautiful friendship.
and it's gonna be hard to get back to any kind of version of that now,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Paige kind of admits that she's now seeing Carl and Lindsay's relationship in a different light after this weekend, and she just feels really bad for them because this situation is so bad, and like they can't even see it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
very much clear to the group that like this is not good, this is not going well, and they're just
Again,
kind of still in the thick of it.
Paige with the reads, right? She's like
Yeah,
they can't see it from where they're sitting. They're too
yeah.
it's almost like too normalized to them at this point because that's just been so much of their relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So sad note to end it on, but that's the end of the Speedway Hamptons weekend.
Which was such a fun weekend other than
It was
that.
a
Like,
fun
oh my
weekend.
gosh, that was probably one of their top parties. It even
I
looked like
think
other
so.
people were having fun, which like
Yes.
as like at the beginning, lots of fun. Remember like there was a
Hmm.
couple seasons recently where we're like it feels like these are just random people that you've gotten to
Yeah.
come in the house
Just
and
kind of like,
like
yes, 100%.
just felt a little sadder, but
Yeah.
this felt like a really cool party. I wanted to
It
be
did.
there.
It did feel like a pretty cool part. I wanted to be there. I loved the theme. I thought it was great. I thought the good little go karts and stuff that people could like
Oh my god, they look
ride
so
around was so
fun.
fun.
Minus
Dangerous
the
but fun.
injuries.
Yeah, exactly. So now we have a couple scenes happening in the city, and one happening out of the city. So we actually have Kyle and Amanda going to look at a house in the burbs. Somebody, I think it's Brands by Bravo, actually did like a. I guess they must have done like a Google search or something of this house, and this house is actually technically in New York State.
I thought
So it's not even in New Jersey.
yeah, I thought they said it was in Southampton.
It is. It's in
Yeah.
Southampton. Yeah.
Okay. That's so funny. Why are they trying to be like this is like why?
Oh, this could be our life if we bought a house in the Hamptons. Like,
Yeah, that's what it
yeah.
is.
And honestly, maybe that is what Kyle and Amanda should do. Maybe they should buy a house in the Hamptons and like have this be like the next version of Summerhouse or something.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I don't think either of them are fully aware or ready for what this next step actually is of them living in New Jersey, and it just sounds really strange and sketchy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Also,
house is pretty that they look at though.
oh, it's so pretty. The backyard is like beautiful.
It's amazing. Yeah, so in the moment you can very much see like the real estate agents like showing them around. We'll extend reality and believe that it is actually in New Jersey. You can tell that Kyle is like scared shitless, like he is so concerned about the idea of
Yeah.
being out
His face
here.
is so shook the whole time. I
Yeah.
don't think he had anything to say.
No, literally. And Amanda's like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. We can put a swing set here and it's all like fenced in. It's so good." Um yeah, and basically kind of Kyle like concludes the scene with a confessional talking about how, this purchasing a house in New Jersey or wherever would be a short-term relief for kind of like some of the issues in their relationship, but it seems like they have, bigger issues that would eventually catch up with them, and then they would also just happen to be cut off from New York. So I don't
And
think he's wrong.
no, I think that's definitely fair to say as well too. It's like obvious there's kind of two different issues. There's one that Amanda just really doesn't want to live in New York anymore. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand that. Like honestly,
Yeah.
especially when she was like I'm walking my dog outside at like 10 p.m. at night.
Mm-hmm. I just don't feel
Like
safe.
yeah, like
It's
and
legit.
I want to have a backyard.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, like this isn't a magic fix. Like
No.
it's not gonna magically fix all of their problems. And actually, if they don't fix their problems before they move, then Kyle's just gonna resent her because he's gonna be like, "Well,
Yeah.
now I'm in this place I didn't even want to be, and I
Yeah.
still hate you." Not to say they
Yeah.
hate each other, but like or like we still have problems.
Yeah, well, and not to jump ahead, but like even so, they're talking about it at the Italian dinner, like later on in the episode, and Amanda's talking about how like, well, so I can go if we have this like place it's going to be an investment property, but we can have it so that I can go away for like a week or 2 weeks
or a
or a month at
month.
a time, and you're just like, what? Like that sounds weird.
Yeah.
You want to it's like in Sex and the City 2, the movie, when like Carrie and Big like want to have like keep their own like separate apartments so they can have like the weekends together or something, and it's just like there's like this like weird dynamic of like that's what you want this relationship to be. You want to be able to disappear for a month at a time and like not see your
And like,
husband.
what do you
Like
do when you have kids at that point? Like you're
yeah, well, and it's interesting too because then in the after show, Amanda admits that like her dad actually came up with a good idea that was like just move to like a more residential part of New York City where
That's what
you
I was
can like
thinking.
right, and it's like and it apparently hadn't even occurred to Amanda or Kyle that that was an option. You're just like that's crazy. Like of course that's an option. Like we've seen, I think was it in Roni this year they showed like New York City at Halloween, and Bryn goes like trick or treating in like the West Village or something.
Okay.
Am I making
I
that
don't
up in my
remember.
mind? Did you? I don't know. Anyways, it looked super cute and adorable, and like it is very much still giving like that like residential like small like children like running around kind of like experience, like giving community, giving all the things that you want. But it does also just happens to be in New York City, so you can still be like connected to the city and be there and kind of like have that like hot young singles kind of experience, but also still be like a little bit more like, but we're
That's
getting old
oh
now.
my god, that's so I can't believe they didn't just think about that. That is so wild. It's
Right?
like we can only
Yeah.
live in this one core
There's
area
a,
of
this is the one
downtown.
spot that we can live. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and then but apparently Kyle is still looking at something that would be like Loverboy HQ and their apartment like on top of it. And it's like, well that's wrong too. Like
Well, that's it. If they
that's
lived
not a
just
solution.
more like in a suburb area, still in New York, and then he had an office downtown,
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
could do that.
that that totally works as well. Yeah, I know. This whole like I have to like it's very much like Bethany Frankel, like back when she was like running her like entire her empire out of her like office and like or her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously in like the early seasons of Bethany Ever After, it was like literally one room, but then they like build this like whole massive like house where they're supposed to just like have like a little like office like they space there, and it's just like it's weird that it's connected, like it's weird that it's there, like go have a different space, don't do
Yeah.
these things together. Separation,
Yeah.
guys. Anyways,
Although
that's my weird
I would
tangent.
still kind of like a giant house that a part of it could be an office, but it was like far.
Yeah, yeah, but
Or
also like don't run your entire business like out of your house. Like when you have like literal like multiple employees, like which it
oh
sounds like
yeah.
Loverboy has,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they don't need to be coming into your space, and they don't want to come into your space probably,
It's
like
true. And it can create that like separation of like, hey, now I'm gonna go home. My home's gonna be like a
mm-hmm.
safe place to like not think
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, exactly. And like just have an office where you can like work if you need to be able to go home and like work in the evenings, like just have an office in your house. Not that hard.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. I digress. Um, we get a little scene between Sierra, West, Jesse, and Danielle. They go to like a cute little rooftop bar. Not a huge amount of kind of like information comes out about this. We do find out that Sierra is working on getting representation from a modeling agency based in New York, so that's exciting.
And she was like, oh, I didn't know if that would happen. I was shocked. And I was like, you're literally probably one of the
You
most
look
beautiful
gorgeous.
people I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, I
Like,
can understand what she's saying when she's like, "I'm short and
oh,
old for the
yeah.
industry,"
Right, right, right.
but it's true. Like, there's still like Kristen Takeman was still modeling when she was like at the beginning of her Roni career. So like, you're not that old and you're fine. Diversity, things are
Mm-hmm.
changing. Danielle admits that she's hooked up with a drummer from LA that week. Love that for her. Once again, keeping the hookups outside of the summer house. So good job, Danielle. Learned your lesson from Winter House. And Jesse decides to air some dirty laundry about Wes and Sierra's relationship. And Sierra is horrified. And I am actually very concerned that Jesse is going to be the main reason that Sierra and Wes don't end up together, because he just keeps on inserting himself in ways that he should not
Yeah. And I
between
don't
these
think
two.
they're still together.
No.
So
I'm sure they're
sad.
not. I'm sure they're not. It's upsetting. We then get a scene between Carl and his groomsmen getting fitted for their suits, their tuxes,
And
let's
his
say,
flower boys.
and his flower boys. They get to come too, and this is where we get our first scene with Andrea, which is super exciting.
How much did you miss Andrea? He
So
just brings
much.
so much happiness and
He really
joy. I just
does.
miss him
He
so
really
much,
does.
and I don't understand why they didn't bring him back that
I
first time.
know.
I think now it's probably
Yeah.
more of a choice, like he's engaged and he's living life. But there was a season where I think they let him and Luke go, or didn't ask him to come back.
I think at that point, even he was already dating Lexi, so I think that was part of the reason why they didn't get him to come back. But yeah, he's just like he's a perfect friend of, like, he could be coming in like each weekend and still be, I don't know, hanging out.
And everyone loves him. Like, the way that everyone
they
lights
legitimately
up
do
when he comes into the room. Also, when I finished watching this episode, I literally was just walking around the house going, Allora.
Cute. Getting ready for your Italy trip.
Yeah, just prepping my Italy trip. Oh my god. Also, all the outfits, sorry, I'm skipping ahead, but their outfits, and I want to have that so party. Cute. I want to buy all of the white linen. They're my inspo for going to Italy.
Yeah, amazing. It's so cute. I know. I'm obsessed. Anyways, so this is a good opportunity for Kyle to kind of like have somebody as like a bit of a sounding board for like how he's thinking and feeling. So Andrea kind of very much understands that even though he was excited about the idea of kind of being a flower boy and being included in the wedding, he can see why Kyle is kind of like, yeah, but, you know, we've been friends for 10 years and he officiated my wedding, and like, you know, it's kind of weird that this is what I'm being like designated as. So nice little moment there. We then find out that group has kind of gone on a bit of a debaucherous night out after, which is, you would not expect it from that group of people. They didn't look too wild and crazy, but I guess, you know, let a group of like 8 boys out in New York City and they're gonna have a good time.
Also, okay, is it not kind of wild that these are people who are like in their late 30s and in their bridal party there's still like 30 people, or like their wedding party, like they have so many people in their wedding party, and I feel like normally as you get older your friend groups do naturally kind of shrink a little bit just because everyone gets like busy and there's jobs and there's like, oh my god, like even Lindsay, like I think when she went on her what would have been her bachelorette, there was like so many girls and it's also like it makes the Kyle thing even worse because it's like you have so many people in this wedding party.
That's just it. Like he would have been one among like so many. Like you wouldn't even know he was on there.
Like put him in the middle, like put him at the end, like whatever.
He's short, you know, he would have been fine. Anyways, I know it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I can kind of see them being very social people that do have like just like huge groups of friends though. Like that definitely kind of
maybe
seems
people
like
in the comments will be like, wow, you're a loser.
No, but I'm sorry. If I was on this show and I was the one that had to like staff those parties like each weekend, like there'd be like the same 4 people there each weekend. Which is great. I love those
Iris
4 people.
Is busy. Well, don't know what else to do now.
Sorry. Exactly. Yeah, okay. Anyways, so it's finally Friday. We have the group driving up for the weekend. Andrea is driving up with Kyle and Amanda, and Paige is driving up with Jesse, which I think is fun to kind of get some different dynamics going. Not a huge amount of information kind of happens here. More than anything, we just find out that Kyle is in the doghouse because he was out until 4 a.m. Story very much checks out there. Carl and Lindsay kind of arrive. So Paige and Jesse arrive to the Summerhouse first. They start to get set up. The caterer arrives to start to set up as well for like the actual dinner party. And then Carl and Lindsay arrive next. And this is where Paige finds out that Kyle has been demoted to flower boy. And she just delivers the best confessional I think we've ever heard. I did actually write it down. Good. It's so good. And I loved it too because I was like, honestly, like I feel like I could start most of my sentences this way. So let's get into it. So she says, I know that it looks like I'm sitting here just listening to this conversation. Same. But I am bursting inside. Carl officiated their wedding and they're making him a flower boy. I wonder who made that decision. He will throw petals as I walk down the aisle. That's what she thought. I'm just like, I wouldn't even go. I would have slapped Carl in his face if he had said that to me. Like, have fun at your wedding. See ya.
Oh my god, I love that was amazing.
It was good.
I love Paige so much. Honestly, so I think she's giving like Stassi confessionals. Like her confessionals are so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Without like was still being like a little bit less unhinged than Stassi. Like Stassi definitely got to like mean girl level.
That's true.
And like just like also like her demonic kind of like
Okay,
satanic
more
like
like
threats and stuff that she could wield against people.
later season
Yeah,
Stassi
totally.
confessionals.
It's so good.
Yeah,
It's so good though.
that was
It is. It's
that was
amazing.
incredible. But yeah,
Yeah.
also her just being, it might look like I'm just casually listening to
I
this
might look like I'm
conversation.
here looking at this conversation, but literally the story of my life. So Danielle arrives next, and the girls go to hang out inside. They kind of try to like get a little bit of tea from the weekend before, but there really wasn't a huge amount of tea. They kind of like caught her all up on that one. But we do find out that the reason that Wes won't be joining this weekend is that he is going to a wedding this weekend. So there is that. We then finally have Andrea, Amanda, and Kyle arrive at the house. Sierra and Paige go to join Amanda in her room as she's starting to get unpacked, and they get kind of like the lowdown on why Amanda is mad at Kyle. Obviously, we know that she's annoyed because he like came home at like 4 a.m. But she's also like, I can't even sleep if he's not at the house, and so like I was finally falling asleep at like 3:30, and then he comes home at 4. And then Paige is like, oh well, like it's just Rich that coming from him because he keeps on saying that you're the one that like isn't the adult, and he's the one coming home at 4 a.m.
It's true. Well,
yeah.
You know what I just thought about actually as you're saying this and just kind of remembering the episode?
Mm-hmm.
There are, I don't even want to say this, but like there are some similarities in the whole idea, like the whole thing that we're seeing between Lindsay and Carl, where Carl's kind of like, I just kind of thought we'd grow out of this, and Lindsay would grow out of this. That's kind of what Amanda's saying about Kyle too. She's like,
ain't it the truth?
She's like, I was dating. She's like, I was like, I'm dating an older man. He's gonna like want to settle down soon, and he just never really did.
No,
and like
10 years later, still going strong.
And in that way, like they are very different, right? Like she is a lot more of a homebody, and but she, like, to give it to her, like, I know they always talk about her as being like this homebody or whatever. Like they party all the time. Like she's still in this house every
she's still
weekend.
Going out a fair amount.
Like I think she still does her share of partying. It's just like Kyle's partying is at like another level. And I do think we've said this before, like they do really get along. Like we understand why these two people are together. I think the fun that they have with each other, the jokes that they have with each other, we understand it. But yeah, like there are those differences that like something does have to give.
Yeah. And eventually I hope that they will kind of like find their groove and be able to kind of like come to a good place. But you could very much see this relationship like ending in divorce, and like not like them just never being able to kind of like come to terms with like who each other is and like figure out a way to like be okay with that. And like it's a little scary because you would think that like this, far into their relationship, they would be in a little bit of a better place.
It is really interesting, and it's like I wonder if both of them just thought the other person would change.
Well, I think that is what is happening, right? Like that's what exactly what Amanda is saying.
That's what Amanda
she thought,
is.
Yeah. And I think that Kyle is like either thinks that like I don't even know what Kyle.
Yeah, like I wonder what Kyle is waiting. Like
I don't know. Like because the thing is, does he really want to settle down? Like is he always just gonna kind of like be like Tom Schwartz, like moving the goalpost of like, oh well, I want to have this amount of money in my bank account before I can propose to you. Oh, I want to do this before I can propose to you. Like, and like is kind of just like, well, I still want to be in this relationship, so I'm gonna kind of like say yes that we will eventually get to that point, but I don't actually want that, and I can't tell you that because I'm too afraid to tell you. Or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I am at least happy that we did see those like winter house seasons. Yes, and I think that one Summerhouse season when they got along really well.
Yeah.
Because or else we would be like, guys, what's happening? But at least we saw the glimpses of why they are together.
Yes.
But yeah, totally. Like I think Lindsay and Carl kind of like overshadowed a lot. Like I wasn't expecting to see so many of these issues in their relationship. No. And we see next week a pretty intense conversation where Kyle's like, I'm really extroverted and like being married to you is really lonely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, it's rough.
This is not child's play. These are like real serious things to be kind of like working out, like, and also be like working it out when you're already married is difficult too, right? Like you,
and like if they have kids, their kids are gonna see this. Their kids are gonna see all of this, starting from the
Yes.
first. Oh no, Amanda's intro onto the show is not PG. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, no. Hopefully their kids won't watch it.
Yeah.
Be smart enough to do that. So one nice thing that happens towards the end of this episode is that Kyle actually shows Carl the new non-alcoholic Loverboys that they are creating. Basically, it sounds like they've been in the works of kind of like, coming up with this concept for the last year. I think it's super cool. It's really nice. He wants to potentially set up like a revenue share base for Carl, like if he wants to be involved and wants to help promote the new alcoholic beverages.
The non-alcoholic beverages.
Oh, what did I just say?
The new alcoholic beverages.
Oh, sorry, the non-alcoholic beverages. Yeah. And yeah, and I just think it's really nice. I just think it's great to see kind of like Kyle kind of like still be caring for Carl in this way, and like still be kind of like committed to that version of their relationship and their friendship and wanting good things for his friend. Yeah, and then it's kind of interesting because Carl then talks about it like in a confessional and kind of makes it seem like he doesn't think that Lindsay would be open to him doing that, which I'm really surprised by.
I know. It is really interesting. I don't know what the dynamic is that's happening there, because it does feel like a pretty low stakes, like just really good opportunity and perfect fit. Like
literally,
yeah,
like that's just it. Like you were part of Loverboy, like that was like a thing that you were doing. You were part of sales and business development. Like this feels like a natural next step, especially if you are somebody that wants to like, had the idea of opening a sober bar, and like maybe that isn't the right thing to do right away, but this could be like a stepping stone of how you could do that. Like I don't know, there's just feels like that would be a thing that Lindsay would be on board with, but maybe I just don't know. Or maybe Carl is kind of like implying that, and like that's not really how Lindsay would feel. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's really,
it's weird, right?
It's hard to know. But
it's
even
a weird little moment.
Even Amanda, I think it was when they were talking about the Flowerboy thing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, Lindsay kind of like isolated Carl from a lot of his friends. Yeah. Like he changed, like their relationship. And I don't think you could put it all on Lindsay. It's like both of them, but their relationship did. Look at Danielle, like did isolate them from a lot of their, the dynamic, their friendships. 100%.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, so interesting. We'll kind of see how that progresses. I don't know if we'll get to see a little bit more of that play out over the course of the summer. I kind of hope so, because I think it's an interesting like storyline and a little bit more of an interesting dynamic to go towards.
I mean, I think the fact that they introduced it here is they're probably going to release it because they released this summer. Didn't they just release it at BravoCon?
Maybe.
I don't remember. Anyways, but yeah, like I feel like it's probably not the last we're going to see of it in this.
No, I don't think so.
Season.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so the group gets ready for the Italian dinner. Everybody looks super cute. Love the little outfits. Love the little table setting. Amazing job, Paige. Unofficially, I mean, you planned it. You organized it, right?
Yeah.
You probably made the final selection on things. And Paige makes a toast to the group. She says that Italy is where she goes with her family, and she says that you guys are my family. So very cute little moment. And then at the end of the episode here, we have Danielle asking Amanda about the house search and how that's going. And that's where we find out that Amanda's like, oh, we know it would be an investment property and I could go there for like a month at a time.
And everyone's like, what?
Yeah, everybody's a little bit like, ears perked up on that one. And then Danielle asked the question, Kyle, are you willing to compromise for what she wants? Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, basically we're just gonna have to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, he's like long pause, and then Danielle's like, that's a no.
I guess that answers that question. Yeah, exactly.
And then
so crazy. It was a good episode.
It was a good episode. It's just such a good season so far, and it's like fun, and I like want to watch it, which is nice.
Yeah, it is nice. And even like Danielle like asking that like simple question, right? Like that's like such a little like this cast is just getting so well trained. I'm so impressed. They're so messy. It's so good. It's so enjoyable.
It's
loving
true.
It.
Yeah, and I feel like the people in the house, it's like such a minus Carl and Lindsay, but it's just such a good dynamic overall. Like everyone gets along so well.
Well, and I think even with Carl and Lindsay, like, you know, there are like there's still moments that they're enjoying each other's company and enjoying being here with this group. So I think for the most part, it is actually a much healthier summer than we saw last year.
Totally. And they're both like, Carl's super, you know, seeing the bond that Carl has with the boys is really nice. I feel like we haven't seen that in a little bit. And even Lindsay getting back with the girls, like, it just feels like fun vibes again, which is really nice.
It is really nice. Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to get to watch the rest of the season. I love that we get to say that about one of these episodes, of one of these TV shows. At least something. But yeah, so that was our recap of Summerhouse. Let us know what you guys thought about this week's episode and how you're feeling about the Flower Boy comments, the burbs potential, all that good stuff.
Yay!